Hey everyone, Kate Bohr and Fiona Pearman joining you for this week's Facebook Live, where we're continuing to dig into the theme for International Women's Day, which is on Friday, Count Her In. And this is all about economic empowerment. We've been talking about what that looks like, and the UN reference point is really valuable here. And then we've really looked at two specific areas that our work focuses on, where we have deep expertise. And this is around workforce participation, the decision points around that, and equally the gender pay gap. Now, a very topical time with the WGEA data coming out last week. I think there's been lots of different commentary around that. And today what we want to dig into is when we think about economic empowerment for women, we think about gender pay gap and workforce participation, and they're deeply linked. We want to talk about how do we then as organizations drive the conversation, drive change across organizations, ultimately across industries, and of course across our country as well. And I think the first piece, starting with the WGEA data, is lots of commentary around that. But I think the important piece is, yes, the number is a stake in the ground. What matters is what we do from here. What matters is the conversations that data is fostering in organizations, with leaders, with individuals, and that it's really constructive and proactive and solution orientated. And I think importantly, led and including all.
There's so much opportunity here. I think what was really exciting when we ran roundtables earlier this year, there is real appetite and interest in organisations about how do we do this well. We maybe aren't the place we'd like to be, and we're really curious about how do we communicate this well? How do we involve others? How do we make sure people are across what's going on? How do we set up some meaningful milestones and goals and share our progress on that? And there's a lot of ways in which organisations can be very proactive here. Potentially, in the past, we've maybe been a bit reactive around this kind of data. And I think the organisations that are on the front foot and are willing to examine how they can do this, it's really, they're going to have a huge advantage, because that kind of engagement with their existing stakeholders is really powerful, but also potentially from a recruitment point of view. And I think we often see when we're shifting the dial, when we're changing things, it's really important to start piloting things, to start testing. How can we improve things here? What would make a material difference? And we want to be able to measure this, right? Because obviously the WGEA data is measured, but what are the other ways in your organisation that you could start to measure and improve and see some of the things that we know lead to having that sustainable pipeline of female talent? And often it's about measuring, who's coming into the organisation at what level. It's about being aware of who's being promoted at what point. And the more we're conscious of that and we're leaning into those conversations, the more likely we are to foster equity.
Yeah, I think what matters most is that when we're here this time next year, that there's movement and there's progress. And I think one of the traps organisations can fall into is leaving this all to the HR team or the inclusion and diversity person, if you're lucky enough to have someone like that. Our smaller organisations, it does tend to be sat over in HR. So so the responsibility of solutions on those teams, as compared to this is a all of organisation conversation. And when you enroll and enlist all of the organisation in those conversations, you're going to start to get ideas, right? That may work, that might not work. I think the expectation that we know the answers here, the ship has sailed on that belief. Yes, we know that there are certain things that work in certain organisations, and your ability to test, pilot, experiment, be willing to have your people as part, leading part of those experiments, throwing in the ideas, I think is really powerful. I think the policies, procedures, the structures are important. And I'm going to suggest this is where organisations, and actually I think the research shows this as well, this is where organisations have done good work, right? We've mandated policies. Some organisations have got sort of, recruitment quotas around targets and all those sorts of things. So the policies, structures, procedures are important. And the truth is there will still be variations. There will be still things that fall through the cracks. With organisations with such huge agendas, right? Things will be missed. And so I think yes, if you haven't gone back and looked at all your policy structures and frameworks, often it's the things that fall through the cracks that are actually the red flags is, hey, we need to do some work here. So not only do we need to resolve the issue right now for this particular individual, but now let's look at, for example, the onboarding process. If there's been challenges with, onboarding, a woman into a male-dominated environmental work site, what's the process piece that we need to look at so we can make improvements there that will drive change into the future?
I think there's a really big piece here for organisations to start to really delve into and understand what are the unwritten rules, what are the cultural artefacts, what are the things that are going on that potentially are undermining our best policies, structures and systems, and to start to bring these two things together so that they are informing each other. And all the time, the opportunity here is to improve. This is not going to be perfect overnight, and there are lots of little ways, if we're taking the signals, if we're seeing the opportunities and we're bringing that back into a broader framework, that will shift the dial and will make a big difference in terms of how your organisation attends to this and the way in which everyone feels included or potentially not included. I think the thing that we know really has a big impact is the willingness for organisations to support individual women around what they want to achieve, what they'd like to do and what they'd like to be different. The sooner that women get clear about what it looks like for them, how they want to negotiate and advance their careers and in what ways, and potentially what they see or perceive as roadblocks to doing that, the easier it is to have good quality conversations and start to understand where are the ways, what are the interventions, what are the programs that we could do around this that would really make a very significant difference to that pipeline of female talent, to the ways in which women are engaging and the willingness to put their hands up for those more senior roles.
Yeah, I think in our work, whether that's women in leadership bespoke programs in organisations or our Acts of Confidence program, a lot of the conversation and the work we do is actually helping women really look at the assumptions and beliefs, the default behaviours that they're having around what's possible for them, whether it's around capacity for work, whether that's working, the ability to work full time or not work full time, what impact that's going to have on my home life and other areas of my personal life as well. The beliefs they have around a willingness to go in and negotiate a salary. We know women, a lot of women feel very uncomfortable with doing that. We coach women all the time through these steps as well, or whether it's actually looking at assumptions and beliefs around career progression and what will be required or what compromises they assume or think they might need to make in order to pursue that career progression as well. All of these assumptions, beliefs, default behaviours are impacting the choices women are making around workforce participation, the number of hours they work in what capacity. All of these things are impacting how they're having conversations around remuneration and or related progression opportunities. And so we know that this impacts workforce participation. We know that it impacts the gender pay gap. And so the opportunities, yes, to do the macro work at an organisational level, but equally and importantly for us in our work is it's actually to support women to get really clear on what it is that they want, to remove barriers and beliefs around what's possible so that they can really have the career that they really want. That it's in alignment with who they are, what they want, where they want to go. So lots of opportunity here, lots of appetite, which I think is really exciting as well for us, Fee. And I think lots of genuine intent across organisations and across leaders to really drive change here. And I think probably never been a better time for organisations to be having this conversation and never been a bigger opportunity to drive sustainable change in this area.
So, if you're part of an organisation and this is a topic you really like to dig into, head to our website, quantumimpact.com.au. Lots of resources there, and you can get in touch with us and start to think about ways in which you can make a difference in terms of economic empowerment for women.